Thank you. I'm here with Adam Singolda, CEO of Taboola, and we're going to talk about advertising outside of the platforms, particularly on the open web. But Adam, before we get started, just to familiarize our viewers, when you're talking about the open web, you're talking about those sites and properties that exist outside of the dominion of the major platforms, right? Outside of Facebook, outside of Twitter. Could you maybe explain the term a little bit more?
Yeah, and hey, David, hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. So open web is really anyone that exists, any digital property that exists outside of the platform, outside of the walled gardens, and that can be a news publisher, it can be an e-commerce website that's not Amazon, it can be a native application that's on your phone, it can be an app that's on your TV and your connected TV, right? So HBO Max, if you've seen Wonder Woman, that was an open web. So all of those digital properties exist outside of the walled garden, which means they would partner with other companies. It means they will have more transparency as they work with advertisers. It means that they don't have necessarily the same level of data and AI that the platforms have, and hopefully that's where companies like Taboola, we can find great partnerships that together we can counter weight the giants.
And this is kind of a general question, but for me, obviously there's a good amount of nostalgia bound up in what I think about as the open web, right? This sort of, in some ways, unexplored frontier of just what's out there on the wider web. But for users today, for audiences today, who are spending a lot of time on the platforms, I guess how big is the open web in terms of how much it makes up of their digital consumption?
So the open web is about 25% of people's time. And in fact, the open web collectively is bigger than any one walled garden. The biggest challenge the open web has right now is that it's still quite fragmented. So if you're an advertiser and you want to spend significantly, it's easier to do so on search with Google, social with Facebook, Amazon, which is an $18 billion advertising business now. So that's also easier because you have those pipes ready and it's already scalable. The open web is beautiful and it's big. It's a $64 billion market, but it's highly fragmented. There is no Shopify for advertising, or there is no Google for the open web. There's Google for Google. So this is sort of the opportunity we have, right? So if we could consolidate the formats to be beautiful and ready, and the data and the partnerships and all of those things, so it's easier for advertisers to spend. I believe that the open web can be a great alternative and a growing alternative to the walled gardens.
So you mentioned advertisers a couple of times, and we are at the Media Buying Summit. So let's talk about it. What do advertisers have to gain here, other than some of the things you already mentioned? Is it more control, which I know is a big thing with advertisers today? Is it lower cost? Is it something else altogether?
I always think that the biggest value the open web, first of all, gives advertisers is that when you advertise on social networks, you advertise against the version of person I wish I was. Right? I'll never share with Facebook, things that are very personal to me, but my kids, or maybe some healthcare things I'm looking into that I want to get educated on. But I will read about it all the time. You see, and this is why the open web is great, because you have this context, this curiosity graph advertisers can tap into. The open web doesn't know who you are, much like Facebook does. But the open web knows what you're reading about, and that can be perhaps even a better proxy for what market you're in, right? So if I'm reading about cars, I may not share which car I'm thinking of buying, but I'll read about it. And that means it's a great opportunity for an advertisers to be introduced to me and create this serendipity that I stumble upon this message. So this is why I think the open web carries this context and curiosity graph, which is special and great. And I mean, there are a lot of studies also that suggest that the open web carries more trust, right? Like the IEB had a study that said that 80% of people trust ads more on news websites versus social websites, which makes sense, right? Like I trust my local news site or the national website that I love more than a user-generated feed of things. So there's also third-party studies that validate this concept of trust and authenticity and curiosity. And that's the reason why advertisers can win in the open web. I also think that's why the open web has to survive, because we need it. So that, I think, is the biggest opportunity. And I think we're on the right track to keep giving advertisers more value in the open web.
That's a good point about trust. And when we're talking about trust, often with all the conversations around privacy and all that, it goes to data. But another area where it's been relevant through the years has been formats, particularly like native formats, and having something that looks like it fits organically on the page, so that users are more apt to click it, to trust it as a possible source to actually engage with it. And I feel like conversations about native advertising have lapsed a little bit over the past few years. Maybe that's because so many formats in general have moved to be native inherently. But when you're thinking about what is native on the open web, what do those formats look like?
So I do want to touch on trust, because you mentioned trust and formats. So just on trust, another point that's worth mentioning with regards to the open web is that, if you're an advertiser or a buyer for a media agency, another benefit you gain when you work with the open web and when you fund quality journalism is that nobody gets fired for advertising on BBC or The Independent, So you also get this editorial premium as an advertiser, as a media buyer, that you're spending your dollars in a safe way and you're funding the future of journalism, especially these days with, third-party integrations like IAS, Double Verify, Moat, and others. So just with regards to trust, the open web also gives you that value. Now back to native advertising formats and in general, this category. So I think native advertising has been around for a long time from the advertiser point of view, right? So native advertising is where the paid value to the consumer looks like the organic product. So search is native because the search results are sometimes organic and they're sometimes paid. Twitter is native. Sometimes tweets are organic, sometimes they're paid. And then on the publisher environment, some articles are paid, some are organic. Some of the recommendations are organic, some are paid. So it's been around. I think when I look into the future, and I share this with investors as we were talking to them about process of going public, I said, close your eyes and wake up 10 years from now. Do you think the open web is going to look like it looks right now, or will it look more like Instagram, TikTok, WeChat in Asia? Right? Like today you have this page with variety of formats and fighting for our user attention, but side by side to us, these social networks have beautiful products. I would pay to see Instagram ads. That's how great it is. So I think that native has been matured quite significantly over the last few years. David, like you mentioned, and on the agency side, we see people that have native budgets and native buckets. So I think it's reached, a certain level of maturity. Saying that, I think we're just at the beginning, because I believe my kids will view the open web more and more like we enjoy now social networks that are beautiful and great in terms of the product experience. I think we're seeing already formats like video in feed, thumbnails and title, driving full funnel, performance, video. So we're already seeing all those things, coming into the open web, different placements, homepage, mid-article. So I think we're seeing this category becoming more mature. And in fact, I think we're just at the beginning, because I suspect the future of the open web will be great and beautiful and much more like a consistent product, like a WeChat or an Instagram.
And you mentioned a few metrics there. So to get a little bit more tactical, let's talk about KPIs. Is the open web, is it better for awareness? Is it better for performance goals? Is it both, depending on the context or depending on the format? How are you, if you're looking at sort of like your client set and the campaigns you run with them, what does that breakdown look like?
Yeah, I think first of all, it can really drive both, which is great, because the foundation of the open web is that it can drive performance for advertisers. And this is really important, because it means these are repeatable budgets that cater to what advertisers are trying to achieve from an acquisition cost perspective. So it's really important. The open web carries that foundation. And then you're seeing, thumbnails and title formats, performance video formats. I can give you an example of an advertiser that worked with Taboola and works with us that I really like. My dad is a musician, so I love this example. But it's this guy that started a headphone company in the UK called Flare Audio, and he wanted to be discovered So people will know about his headphones that are better than the traditional expensive headphones. So his were affordable but way better quality headphones. And on social networks and search, it was too expensive and too hard because nobody was searching for them and nobody was showing them just yet. But in the open web, people could discover their brand as they went to the Daily Mail, and they could discover the headphones and perhaps buy them, and other examples like that. And through the open web, through these performance video formats and thumbnails and title, in a publisher environment, he was able to drive almost 80% lower acquisition costs than traditional channels. So the open web, especially as we're seeing this consolidation of ad formats, can totally drive performance. And then on top of that, if you think of homepage placements, which is the Times Square, of the publisher, mid-article, then you start getting into these visible placements, the top of the feed, the first spot. That can be adjacent to editorial content, can carry big ad formats, it can be video. So here we're seeing much more of a top of the funnel metrics being delivered, viewability, completion rates. We're seeing examples with Universal Music Group. They wanted to promote Metallica's 2020 album, and they did it with us, and we're able to distribute their messages on high impact placements. So on the homepage and things of that nature, and they were super happy. Fans saw it and leaned into it, and that was an awareness vehicle. So that's kind of like the YouTube or TV of the open web, right? The homepage and other placements that have this video and big formats that are adjacent to premium quality content. So I think it drives both. And that's why I believe the $64 billion open web market could grow over time to be way, way bigger than that.
That's really interesting. A lot of the things that you talked about now, and I'm sure a lot of the infrastructure for advertisers in general is about to have to be rethought. I mean, I'm sure it already is being rethought, because one of the dominant themes of this event, of our coverage in general, is the deprecation of the third-party cookie, which is familiar to everybody at this point. We don't need to go into too much depth on that as a challenge. But I guess, how are you responding, and how are you seeing the advertisers you're working with responding? Are there some emergent solutions that seem to be leading the pack? Because it's obviously, it affects platforms, but it's going to affect the open web quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a very topical, conversation these days. I think that we're seeing sort of this now coming back of the context as a theme that's coming back, and then what's the value of understanding the context in which consumers interact with the open web. I think, first of all, let me take a step back and say that overall, the fact we're talking about privacy, the fact our objective is consumers being safe, is a great thing. Outside of one implementation or another, the fact we care about it. My mom does not understand how to make the open web feel safe. She needs platforms, browsers, technology companies, publishers to make sure it's a great experience for her. So I do think it's really important. And then specifically, I think what it does is that it resurfaces values that the open web has outside of necessarily who I am or my cookie, right? So I think that especially on International Women's Day, I feel like context will be the queen again. And we're seeing examples like that all the time. Advertisers that are able to extrapolate their target audience, not as a proxy of who they are, demographics, but rather what do they read about and what do other people also read about. So they're following these readership trends as a way to find value for themselves, to drive performance. We spoke about acquisitions earlier, as well as brand value and top of the funnel. So I think that one, I'm happy about the trend, and I think that it's important for anyone to think about first-party relationships, one or another, any way they think they can. And I would focus aggressively on trying to understand context a lot better. I can give you some examples. We had this automobile brand that was convinced that the way they should advertise to their potential buyers was by creating this luxury brand front-end creatives that will eventually lead to their website where they can discuss the car and all of the opportunities. And what we've shown them is that looking at people on their website and what do they read on the Taboola network, what we've seen is that actually people who read about their brand, and even people who are on their website, they read about electric cars all the time. So what they've done is they changed their creatives from luxury brand to EV. And by doing so, same landing pages, by the way, but doing so by adjusting their creatives, they were able to drive a lot more value to them. And all they've done was understanding the context, the readership data, the insights that exist. So I think it's just a new generation of how we should target value to our brand, as well as how to reach consumers differently.
And context is really important. Context is really important to advertisers, to users. One way that comes out is brand safety, right? And brand safety on the open web, even saying that, it sounds like a hard problem to solve. So what's your approach there? I'm sure it's a concern with most of your clients, with probably all of your clients, especially now.
Well, I think right now, first of all, like I said, we live in a great, better world where you have companies that are doing a great job. IAS, Double Verify, and Moat. I mean, Digiday covers them all the time. And so they are hard at work to make sure that they can help advertisers get comfort from multiple sources, not only the technology partner, not only the publisher even, but rather have a variety of sources that all suggest this is safe, buy. So that's one. And I think, again, that might not have been available a few years ago, but now it's much more available for advertisers as well as technology companies. I know we work with all of them and feel we're very proud of that work. I think we should shy away from over-indexing on keyword targeting and trying to understand exactly good or bad, and not dilute the reach we have on the open web. I think it's a miss to the advertiser to do so. So I think, again, you have great companies now that can help you do that. And if I was an advertiser, I would look for which partners that I'm working with have the right policies. They have the right moderation teams to make sure that what they do is safe, reviewed, categorized. I would like to see segmentation. Perhaps you have sides of your business that are more, like GDN, more like massive volume, but then some of your business has, premium segments that I feel more comfortable tapping into, right? So like an example, as you know, we created the high impact placements and the package for people who want a certain top of the funnel experience. And so segmentation also, I think, makes sense. But overall, like I said, nobody gets fired for advertising on the BBC. In fact, it's a holy thing to do. So I think that if I was an advertiser, $1 spent with the open web, so long that it meets your KPIs and safety, is a better dollar spent than the platforms. So we should work hard to find that diversity and scale with the open web, because I do think, by the way, it will help us be more successful as an advertiser community, not to be relying too much on only 2 or 3 companies that I don't think love us as much as the open web does.
Right, and that's a strong case. On a similar note of making a strong case, I have one more question before you go. Taboola is going public. So, with all of that, and I think you just sort of gave us your mission statement in a way, but what are you planning for the company's future?
So thanks, David, for that. And, so let me just say that I'm super excited that we're going public. I still can't believe that it's happening. I have to pinch myself a lot to remind myself this is real, and really take a moment to thank everyone that listened in, that's been with us all these years, Taboolars around the world, and publishers and advertisers and our partners. We would not have had this opportunity if it wasn't for this amazing community. So we basically focus on 2 growth areas. The first one is to expand Taboola to recommend anything, and that means more video, tapping into e-commerce, app download, games, and all of that will help us tap into other types of markets from the advertiser perspective and bring them to the open web, drive growth to our yield, which will be great for the open web and our advertiser base. So we spoke today about high impact package. That's part of our growth strategy with video advertisers, brands, and agencies. So more of that. And the second area is Taboola expanding anywhere. And that is, how can we bring our news publishers outside of the browser and bring people back to the open web? So we want to be on every Android device in the world, like an Apple News product powered by Taboola. Every PC, connected TVs, and even automobile one day. I have a Spotify integration in a car, but why shouldn't I have NBC videos and CNBC Squawk Box and all those good things? So over time, we want to see news anywhere. So that's the second area of focus. And I'm excited to hopefully ring the bell for the open web very soon as we become a public company.
All right. Well, congratulations for sure, Adam, from us here at Digiday. I think that's about all the time we have. So thanks again for joining us for this conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, David.